And has it been 3 months already? Hey guys, welcome back to Life of Bliss. Today I will be going over the final review of the Emotiva XPA-7 amplifier and kind of going over why I like to use external amplification in the home theater. If you're new to the channel and haven't seen my home theater before, it consists of a 5.3.2 setup, including some DIY sound group 1299 front stage speakers, Volt 10 surround speakers, and some 8-inch alpha speakers from Monoprice in the ceiling for Dolby Atmos. So I won't be going over all of these specs like I did in the unboxing video, but just as a reminder, this does 200 watts per channel times 7 channels at 8 ohms, 300 watts per channel times 2 channels at 8 ohms, and a whopping 490 watts times 2 channels at 4 ohms. The XPA series of amplifiers are a modular design that can be configured from 2 channels all the way up to 14 channels. They do this with the same chassis and adding other high power or stereo modules to each of the 7 slots provided. This particular model has 7 of the high power modules, and I was able to power all of my main level and height speakers in my system with one amplifier. The XPA series amplifiers are also upgradable, so if I decided to add some rear channel speakers, or if I moved and made a 7.4 system with 4 overhead Atmos speakers, I could send this unit back. They could swap out some of the high power modules with some stereo modules, and I would be able to continue to power my entire system with one amplifier. To set up the amplifier, I used my Yamaha RXA3070 receiver's RCA pre-outs to connect to the RCA inputs on the back. This unit does have XLR inputs as well, but that was not an option with my receiver. I used banana plugs on the 5-way binding posts on the back to connect the 12-gauge speaker wire going to each of my speakers. To power up the XPA-7, you can either use the trigger function off of your receiver into the back of the unit here, or you can push the power button there in the front. Startup doesn't take too long, but expect to wait about 10 seconds or so. Now, with all of my equipment tucked away in a closet, I didn't really need to utilize this function, but if you wanted to get rid of these blue indicator lights up front, there is a switch on the back that you can hit to get rid of those. This would be nice if you had a TV stand with all of your equipment underneath and didn't want the distraction from those blue LED lights. Now, even though all of these are off for the channel indicator, you still do have your power button down below that is lit up in blue. Now, with the basic stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about performance. Over the past few months, I've been able to watch all of my favorite go-to demo movies, as well as watch many newer releases with some killer surround effects and soundtracks. While my front speakers are very sensitive at 99 decibels, I felt there was a significant bump in performance once I added the XPA-7. The Yamaha RXA3070 receiver is rated at 150 watts per channel, but only when playing 2 channels. Once you get 7 or 9 channels playing at one time, you'll be lucky to get 80 watts per channel out of that receiver, especially when you have movies with really heavy surround tracks or explosions going on where all channels are firing at once. With the XPA-7's 200 watts per channel RMS, I felt that I had a more dynamic sound experience with both movies and music. The extra power on tap gave way to stronger bass from the dual 12-inch woofers and produced clean, distortion-free sound as loud as I could handle it and beyond. I also busted out my DIY swope towers I made a few years back and hooked them up to the XPA-7 for some stereo listening. Although these had a sensitivity closer to 90 decibels, as expected, the Emotiva powered them effortlessly and with great detail. The switch mode power supply which the XPA series amplifiers utilize switches from a Class AB amplification at lower volumes to a Class H amplification at higher volumes, was seamless, and I never felt like there was a difference in sound switching between the two. Now, with all of my equipment in one enclosed area, heat is always a concern. I wanted to see how much heat this was putting out compared to my Yamaha receiver, so I went ahead and threw in the Metallica Through the Never disc and had a pretty typical listening session. Hey, sorry, I didn't know you guys were home. Welcome home. So after about 90 minutes of whatever the hell that was, with all 7 channels driven and it being at a moderate to high volume, I took an infrared thermometer and measured the top of the Yamaha receiver and the XPA-7. Temperatures vary depending on location, but it seemed the Yamaha was always running anywhere from about 2 to 10 degrees warmer, just depending on where it was on top of the amp. Now, I figured this would be the case because throughout having the unit over the past several months, I would go back there and just touch the top of each unit, and the Yamaha usually ran a little bit warmer than the XPA-7 did. So it was nice to see that the XPA-7 wasn't putting out a ton of heat after being driven fairly hard. And while none of these units produced a ton of heat, it's never a bad idea to add a few extra fans or a module on top of the receiver amplifier with fans in it, just to help dissipate some of that heat further. Especially if these are going to be going in an enclosed area such as a TV stand or a rack unit with walls on all sides. Now, when watching movies, there were a few benefits that I wasn't quite expecting. I felt like the channel separation was much more pronounced when using the external amp versus just using the receiver to power the speakers. Now, this could be going hand in hand with the more full and dynamic sound coming from having more power, but I really felt like the surround effects were easier to pick up and a lot more pronounced when using an external amp. In movies like John Wick 3, where there are bullets flying all over your head and hitting all around you, or Avengers Endgame with the ships and missiles flying all over the place, I really felt like the extra power from the XPA-7 added to the experience, especially when listening to reference or close to reference levels. So with all the good comes the bad, right? Well, to be honest, I had a pretty good experience with this XPA-7 over the past several months. If there was one thing I could complain about, it's that there was just the slightest faint buzz over the compression drivers or tweeters in my system. And when I say faint, I mean I couldn't even hear it in my seating position. The only reason I noticed it was when I paused a movie and went to go pick something up in front of one of the speakers. When I was about a foot or a foot and a half away, I was able to hear just a very faint buzz. I did try to fix that by plugging this unit into 2 separate dedicated outlets in my equipment room back there. That didn't fix it. I was thinking because my speakers were very sensitive, maybe that was why, but I still heard it over the swope towers that I hooked up later. And actually, I also heard just a faint buzz even after switching just to the receiver and using the receiver's amplifier to power the speakers. So I can't 100% for sure say it was the amplifier's fault, but I did notice just a tiny faint buzz over my speakers with my system. Now, coming in at just under $2,100, the XPA-7 isn't exactly cheap. But when you start getting into this level of equipment for your home theater, using external amplifiers, better quality speakers, possibly a pre-pro unit versus a receiver, I really think Emotiva is a good value. I really like using external amplification for your home theater if you can afford it. There are a few reasons for that, but the first probably being the most obvious, which I touched on earlier, you're going to have more power, cleaner power, and better channel separation. The next is you're going to be taking away some of the functions that your receiver has to do, which reduces the amount of heat that it makes. Receivers have many functions beyond amplifying speakers, and all of the processes produce heat. Heat is the enemy of electronics, so taking away that amplification process from the receiver will decrease that heat and hopefully prolong the life of your components. The last benefit that I like that most people probably don't think about is upgrading your components in the future. If you have an external amplifier, even if you upgrade your receiver to the latest model with 8K pass-through and the newest Dolby sound processing, you're not really going to have to worry about how much power that receiver outputs because you already have an external amplifier that meets your needs for your system. Amplifiers don't have to process all that video and audio decoding information that the receivers do. All they're there for is amplifying the signal, so you really shouldn't have to upgrade an amplifier for years to come, unlike some receivers when you're wanting to upgrade your video formats or possibly new sound formats that are coming out. So like I said, guys, I really enjoyed using the XPA-7 in my home theater over the past few months. Be sure to check out the link below for Emotiva's website on their XPA amplifiers, which you can configure anywhere from 2 channels all the way up to 14 channels to fit your space. Hope this video helped you out. Thanks for checking out Life of Bliss, and I will see you soon. Oh, hey. I didn't know you guys were home. Real nice.
Yeah, that's right.